I gotta tell you this right now, because if I wait until later, you might think I'm just pulling your leg. But I swear on my life, everything I'm about to say is true. And I mean true in the sense that if you ever find yourself out there on those empty black highways in the middle of the night, with nothing but your headlights and the sound of your own engine to keep you company, you'll know exactly the kind of fear I'm talking about. Because I have lived it, and it sticks to your bones like cold sweat. I swear to you, some of these nights out there on the road, I felt like I was being pulled into something I wasn't supposed to see. Something not made for people like you and me. And once I got a glimpse of it, I could never unsee it. I still see it when I close my eyes sometimes. And I can tell you right now, if you keep listening to me, you're gonna feel the same chill I felt in my gut on those nights. I've got 10 stories for you. The 10 most disturbing things that ever happened to me behind the wheel of my truck. And every single one of them nearly made me give up the road forever. The first story I need to tell you happened on Highway 87 in New Mexico, and I can remember it clear as day, even though it's been more than 15 years, because when something like this happens, you don't forget it. I was hauling a refrigerated load of meat across the desert, heading toward Amarillo. It was late, past midnight. I had been pushing myself harder than I should have, because the delivery window was tight. I thought I could save some time by cutting down rest. I was cruising at about 65 miles an hour, with the desert stretching out black and endless on both sides. The stars were so bright, it felt like I was driving under glass. I was just thinking about grabbing a coffee at the next truck stop, when I saw something up ahead in the beams of my headlights. It looked like a woman, standing right in the middle of the lane, barefoot, in a white dress, her long hair hanging down, her face hidden. I slammed the brakes so hard the rig shook, and the trailer almost jackknifed. I laid on the horn, but she didn't move. She just stood there like she was waiting for me. My heart was pounding. I'm telling you, I could feel it slamming against my ribs. I leaned out the window and yelled, asking if she needed help, but she didn't answer. She didn't even look at me. I thought maybe it was some drunk who wandered onto the road, or maybe a trick, somebody trying to flag me down and rob me. So I flicked on the high beams, and that's when I realized something that nearly froze my blood. That woman wasn't standing on the pavement at all. She was floating, a few inches above it, her toes not touching the ground. And when the light hit her face, I swear to you it wasn't a human face. It was gray and stretched, like wax melted over bone, and the eyes were just black pits, staring straight into me. I stomped the pedal and swerved around her. My tires screamed against the asphalt, and when I looked in the mirror to see if she was still there, the road behind me was empty. Nothing but darkness. I drove for 20 miles without breathing right, and when I finally pulled into a gas station, I was shaking so bad I had to sit for half an hour before I could even pump fuel. The clerk saw me pale and sweating, and he asked if I was all right. I almost told him, but then I kept my mouth shut, because what would I even say? I saw a ghost floating in the middle of the highway, but that wasn't the end of it, not by a long shot. 2 nights later, I was parked at a rest stop catching a few hours of sleep. I woke up to a sound, tapping on the side of my cab. At first I figured it was just another driver walking by, so I opened the curtain and looked out, but there was no one there, just the dark lot, the buzzing of the light poles. I shook it off and tried to go back to sleep, but then the tapping came again, louder this time, like fingernails dragging across the metal. I froze, my chest felt tight. I looked again, and I swear to you she was there, the same woman, standing under the sodium light, hair covering her face, her body flickering like a bad video feed. I slammed the curtain shut and sat there with my heart thundering in my ears. I stayed awake until the first light of dawn came up, and when the sun finally rose, she was gone. From that night on, for nearly a month, every time I drove through New Mexico, I felt her near me. Sometimes I'd see her in the rearview mirror, just for a second, like she was sitting in the back seat of the cab. Other times I'd hear the tapping again, soft, steady, patient, and I knew she was there. It got to the point where I started avoiding that stretch of highway altogether. I took longer routes just to keep from passing through the place where I first saw her. I knew in my gut that if I saw her again on the road itself, if she stepped in front of me like that night, I might not escape her this time. Now you might be thinking maybe I was tired, maybe I was seeing things, but I wasn't. I know the difference between fatigue and something unnatural, and whatever she wasn't human. Later, I heard from another driver that folks around those parts tell stories about La Llorona, the weeping woman. She haunts rivers and roads, takes travelers with her. Maybe that's what I saw, or maybe it was something worse. All I know is she was real, and she followed me for weeks. Even now, when I have to cross into New Mexico, I feel it, that crawling sensation in my skin. Like she's waiting for me, watching. And let me tell you something. That was only the first of the 10 stories I promised. One of the most disturbing, sure, but not the worst. Because what I saw after that was darker, much darker. I'll take you through each of them one by one. And by the time I'm done, you'll understand why I can never look at an empty highway at night the same way again. The fourth story I've got for you happened out in West Texas. Now, if you've ever driven out there, you know what I mean when I say those roads can swallow you whole. Long, flat stretches of desert highway. Nothing but sand mesquite and cactus on both sides. The sky feels so big it makes you feel small. And at night, that sky turns into a black sheet full of stars. Pretty to look at, but it can play tricks on you too. I was hauling steel beams westbound toward El Paso. It was late, about 1 in the morning. I had the radio low, just enough to keep me awake. The road was straight and empty. I hadn't passed a single vehicle in over an hour. That's when my headlights caught something up ahead. Looked like a car pulled off onto the shoulder. Hazards blinking. Now, any trucker will tell you stop if you see somebody broken down in the middle of nowhere. That desert can kill you quick if you're stranded. So I slowed down, pulled over behind the car, and hit my flashers. Right away, I knew something was off. The car looked old. Not just a little old. I mean decades old. A beat-up sedan from the 60s. The paint was dull and the chrome was rusted through. But the hazard lights were flashing bright red, like it had just rolled off the lot. I climbed down from my cab, walked up careful, and called out, "You need a hand?" Nobody answered. The driver's door was hanging wide open. The inside of the car smelled strange. Damp. Musty. Like wet earth. I leaned in with my flashlight, and that's when I froze. The seats were torn up and rotting. The dashboard was cracked and faded. Cobwebs stretched across the steering wheel. And the keys were still in the ignition. But what really got me were the footprints. Fresh, wet footprints leading away from the driver's side straight out into the desert. Now, I'm no coward, but something about those tracks made my skin crawl. They weren't right. Too long. Toes stretched sharp like claws dragging in the dirt. I backed away slow, my flashlight shaking in my hand, and then I heard it. The sound of someone breathing. Slow, heavy breaths coming from behind the car. I shined the light and saw movement. Something crouched down low just beyond the trunk. Pale arms bent at the wrong angles. Fingers digging into the sand. I didn't wait to see more. I bolted back to my rig, climbed in, and slammed the door shut. My hands fumbled on the keys as I fired her up. In the mirror, I caught one last glimpse of it. This thing pulling itself up from behind the sedan. Tall, thin body. Head tilted back like it didn't have a neck. And 2 glowing eyes locking onto me. I punched it and got out of there fast. My trailer rattled hard as I pushed the speed higher than I should have. I didn't slow down until I hit a rest stop nearly 40 miles down the road. When I parked, I realized I was soaked with sweat. I asked around the next day. Some of the older drivers nodded like they knew what I was talking about. One told me folks call that stretch of road the Phantom Mile. Said people have seen ghost cars out there for years. Old wrecks from decades back appearing with their lights on. And if you walk up close, you might meet whatever crawled out of them. I don't know what I saw that night, but I do know one thing. That car was a grave, and whatever climbed out of it wasn't meant to be walking this earth. So now whenever I see hazards flashing on a lonely Texas road in the middle of the night, I don't pull over unless I can see the driver standing right there waving for help. Because I'll never forget those footprints, or the sound of that breathing in the dark. And that was the fourth story. But trust me, the next one is even worse. Because that one didn't just scare me, it followed me. This one is about something that found me. And it didn't let go for a long time. It started on a run through the mountains of Colorado. I was carrying a load of refrigerated goods headed west. It was late winter, snow still on the ground, ice clinging to the shoulders of the road. The kind of night where your headlights just cut through a wall of fog and your ears pop with every climb up those steep grades. I came around a curve and there she was. A woman standing on the shoulder. Her dress was thin, white, like it belonged at a summer picnic, not on a freezing mountain pass. She held one hand out, like she was asking me to stop. Now every instinct I had told me this didn't make sense. Nobody in their right mind would be walking that high up in the Rockies at midnight. Not in the cold. Not dressed like that. But I swear to you, she looked real. Her hair was dark and tangled. Her skin pale. Lips blue from the cold. I slowed down out of pure reflex, because what if she needed help? The second I eased closer, though, she vanished. My headlights lit up the shoulder clear as day. But there was nothing there. I thought maybe I imagined it. Maybe I'd been awake too long. But then I looked into my mirror. She was sitting on the back step of my trailer. Her face turned straight toward me. Her eyes locked on mine. Through 40 feet of metal and darkness, I nearly lost control right there on the mountain curve. My heart slammed against my ribs. I hit the accelerator like the devil himself was reaching for me. When I finally made it down to a flat stretch, I pulled over. I jumped out with my flashlight. The back of the trailer was empty, just snow stuck to the step, and that fog curling around like smoke. For the next week, she followed me. Every time I drove at night, I'd catch her in the mirror. Sometimes standing on the side of the road, sometimes sitting in the passenger seat of the cab. Only when I looked over too fast. Never for more than a second, but always enough to know I wasn't alone. I didn't tell anyone at first, because who's gonna believe a trucker saying he's got a ghost hitching a ride? But it wore me down. I stopped sleeping. I'd park my rig and still feel her standing outside, waiting for me. Finally, I mentioned it at a truck stop. I told an old-timer who'd been hauling for 40 years. He just nodded slow, said I'd met the lady in white. She's been up there since the 70s. Died in a car crash on an icy pass. Some say she's looking for a ride home. Some say she's trying to drag someone else down with her. He told me the only way to shake her was to drive straight through the night. No stopping, not until the sun came up. So that's what I did. I kept my rig moving through the dark, mile after mile, eyes burning, until the first light broke over the horizon. And when that sun hit the windshield, she was gone. But let me tell you something. Even now when I drive those mountains, I keep one hand on the wheel and one eye on the mirrors. 'Cause once you've seen her, once you've felt her sitting there, quiet as the grave, you never really forget it. And sometimes on a cold night, when the fog rolls in thick, I swear I see her standing just ahead, waiting for me to slow down again. That was the fifth story. And it still chills me worse than any ice storm I've ever faced. Because it wasn't just the road that was haunted, it was me. Now the second story I've got for you happened up in Montana, on Highway 2. That stretch of road is lonely as hell, even during the day. But at night, it feels like you're driving on the edge of the world. Nothing but dark pine trees pressing in on both sides. The only light is what your headlights cut into the black. And if you've ever been up there, you know the air feels different. It's thin, cold, and it bites right through your jacket. I was hauling lumber that night, heading east toward Havre. It was just after midnight, and I hadn't seen another vehicle in over an hour. The CB was dead quiet. No chatter at all. My rig was humming along steady, and I was in that trance drivers get when the miles blur together. Then suddenly, I noticed something strange about the trees ahead. They didn't look right. They seemed darker than the night itself, like they were swallowing the light. I slowed down, thinking maybe it was fog rolling in, or maybe a herd of elk crossing. But as I got closer, I saw it wasn't fog, and it sure as hell wasn't elk. It was a figure, tall, thin, standing right on the shoulder of the road. I flicked the high beams on, and I swear this thing was not human. It was at least 8 feet tall, maybe more. Its arms were too long, its head tilted like it didn't understand how necks were supposed to work, and the skin, or whatever covered it, was pale, almost glowing under the lights. I gripped the wheel tight. My gut told me not to stop, but I couldn't take my eyes off it. As I passed, I got a clear look at its face. If you could call it a face, it didn't have eyes. Just deep hollows that seemed to pull the light in. Its mouth stretched wide open, but there were no teeth. Just darkness. It didn't move as I rolled by. It just turned its head, slow, following me with that empty gaze. I thought that was it. I thought maybe it was some weird hallucination brought on by too much coffee and not enough sleep. But then, a few miles later, I saw it again. This time on the other side of the road, standing perfectly still. Watching, my heart jumped. I knew I hadn't looped back. I was on the same straight road heading east. But there it was again, like it had moved ahead of me, waiting. I pressed harder on the accelerator. My rig was pushing 70 now, but every few miles I'd see it again. Sometimes on the shoulder, sometimes crouched between the trees. Always turned toward me, always watching. And each time I passed it, my chest felt like a band tightening, squeezing the breath right out of me. The worst part came when I checked my side mirror. I damn near drove into the ditch because I saw it running alongside my trailer, its long legs keeping pace with my truck like it was nothing, the pale body flashing in and out of the tree line. I could hear something too, a sound that cut right through the roar of the engine, a kind of shrieking whistle that set my teeth on edge. I floored it. I don't care how heavy that load was, I got that rig up as fast as she would go, and I didn't stop until I hit Havre. When I pulled into the lot behind a diner, I was white as a sheet. My hands were still shaking when I tried to eat something. The waitress asked if I was all right. I just told her I'd had a close call with wildlife. She gave me a look like she didn't believe me, but she didn't press. A week later, I was back in that area. I asked another driver about that stretch of Highway 2. He looked at me serious and told me the locals call it the Stalker. He said more than a few truckers and even hunters have seen it over the years. Tall, pale thing with no eyes, follows you until sunrise. He told me some folks say if it ever catches you, fully stops you dead on the road, you won't be seen again. They'll just find your rig abandoned, engines still running, doors open, cab empty. I don't know if that's true, and I don't ever plan to find out. I avoid that stretch whenever I can. Even now, when I think about it, I can hear that whistling shriek cutting into my ears, and I can see those empty sockets locked onto me, like it was marking me for something. That night in Montana made me realize the road holds more than just restless ghosts, like the woman in white. Sometimes it holds things that don't belong anywhere at all. Not alive, not dead, just watching, waiting, hunting. And that was the second of my most disturbing stories. But trust me when I say, the next one shook me even worse. The third story I need to tell you happened down in Louisiana, on one of those swamp highways where the road is built up above the water on a long stretch of bridge. If you've ever driven through there at night, you know it feels like you're floating over black water with nothing beneath you but miles of swamp and silence. The air is heavy, wet, every sound echoes, and when the fog rolls in, you can barely see the end of your hood. I had a load of produce out of Texas, heading toward New Orleans. It was a sticky, humid night, about 2 in the morning. I'd been driving a while without stopping, and I remember thinking how quiet the CB was. Not a single voice, not a single truck in sight, just me, the bridge, and the swamp below. The fog was thick that night, thick enough that I had to lean forward over the wheel just to keep my lane steady. My headlights carved 2 narrow beams through the white mist, but beyond that, I couldn't see a damn thing. That's when I noticed it. A light in the distance, faint, flickering. Looked like someone waving a lantern at the side of the bridge. I slowed down. My first thought was maybe a car had broken down. Maybe somebody needed help. Out here, you don't leave people stranded. Not when the nearest gas station is 20 miles behind you and 20 more ahead. So I eased off the accelerator, watching that light as it swayed back and forth. As I got closer, I started to make out a figure, a man standing by the guardrail. He had an old lantern in his hand, swinging slow like he was signaling me to stop. He was dressed strange. Not like anyone you'd expect to see on a highway in 2009. His clothes looked old, worn suspenders, a wide brim hat. Clothes you'd see in some picture from the 1920s. I pulled up alongside him, cracked my window, and called out, "You all right out here?" He didn't answer. He just lifted the lantern higher and pointed down toward the swamp. My skin prickled. Something about the way he moved didn't feel right. It was stiff, like his joints didn't bend the way they should. I looked down where he pointed, but all I could see was fog. Thick, heavy fog swirling over the black water. I looked back at him, and that's when I noticed it. His face, it wasn't right. It was pale, grayish, like it hadn't seen sunlight in years. His eyes were hollow, sunken so deep I couldn't even see pupils. And his mouth, it stretched into this awful grin. Wide, too wide. Every instinct I had screamed at me to hit the gas and go. So I did. I rolled that window up so fast and pushed the pedal down. My rig roared forward and I didn't look back. But here's the part that still chills me to the bone. A few minutes later, through the fog, I saw another lantern. Same swaying motion, same faint glow, and another figure by the rail. The exact same man, same clothes, same grin. Standing further up the bridge, waiting. I blew past him, my hands locked on the wheel so tight my knuckles were white. My chest felt like it was closing up. I kept telling myself, don't look in the mirror. Don't you dare look in the mirror. But I did. And there he was, standing in the middle of the bridge behind me, the lantern held high, the light cutting through the fog like a knife. I drove that bridge faster than I ever should have, and when I finally saw solid ground and the fog started to clear, I pulled into a truck stop, shaking so bad I could barely get out of the cab. Later that night, another driver sat down next to me at the diner. He must have seen I was rattled, because he asked what was wrong. I told him about the man with the lantern. His face went pale. He set down his coffee and said, "You saw him too." Turns out a lot of drivers around there know about the lantern man. Story goes he was a rail worker back in the early 1900s, fell off the bridge during construction and drowned in the swamp. Folks say his spirit walks the bridge, swinging his lantern, trying to flag people down. Some say if you stop, if you get out of your truck and follow where he points, you'll never come back. They'll just find your rig empty, door hanging open, lantern glow fading into the fog. I can't tell you if that's true, because I sure as hell didn't stop. But I believe it, because what I saw wasn't a living man. No way, that grin wasn't human. Those eyes weren't human. Even now, every time I drive Louisiana, I pray I don't hit that fog again. Because I don't ever want to see that lantern swaying in the mist. And that was the third story. but it's not the last time something tried to pull me off the road and into the dark. This happened a few years back running through New Mexico. I was hauling a load of dry goods out of Flagstaff heading toward Amarillo. It was late at night, maybe past 1 in the morning, the kind of time when even the stars seemed tired. I'd been pushing hard all day. My back was stiff, my legs sore, my eyes burning. The desert night air should have been cool, but it was one of those nights where the heat clings to the earth and rises up long after the sun is gone. My cab felt like an oven even with the fan on. I remember the road stretching endless ahead of me. No towns, no cars, no lights. Just my beams carving out a patch of pale ground before vanishing into black. There's a loneliness out there on desert highways that's different from anywhere else. It's heavier. It makes you feel small, like you could vanish, and no one would ever find you again. I just crested a long rise when I noticed lights ahead, flickering low and strange. Not headlights, not taillights, something else. They looked like firelight dancing orange against the night. At first I thought maybe a wreck. Maybe a car had caught fire. But as I rolled closer, I realized these weren't flames from a crash. These were torches, lined up along the roadside in a neat row. My gut tightened. Because who in their right mind is out here at this hour standing in the dark desert holding torches? As I eased closer, I saw them. A line of figures, dressed in long robes, faces hidden under hoods, each one holding a burning torch. They didn't move. They didn't wave. They didn't even look my way. Just stood there shoulder to shoulder like a wall of shadows. Flames flickering orange against pale fabric. My heart thudded so loud I thought I'd hear it echo in the cab. Instinct told me to speed up, so I did. I pressed the pedal and let the engine roar. The torches passed by quick, but not quick enough, because in those seconds I looked. I couldn't help it. I saw their faces, or what should have been faces, but there was nothing there. Just pale masks smooth as porcelain. No eyes, no mouths. No features at all. Just blank white ovals glowing in the torchlight. I gripped the wheel so hard my knuckles cracked. And then the impossible happened. As my truck roared past them, the figures turned their heads all at once, every single one of them, snapping toward me in perfect unison. Blank faces pointing right at me. I swore I felt their gaze like ice crawling across my skin. I didn't look again. Couldn't. I kept my eyes locked on the road and pressed the pedal down harder. The engine howled. The torches vanished in the mirror. And I told myself that was it. Just some strange gathering. A cult maybe. Something I didn't understand. But then the smell hit me. Not burning wood, not gasoline. Something older, rotted, like meat left out under the desert sun. It seeped through the vents, heavy and choking. My eyes watered, my throat gagged. I rolled the window down, but the smell only got stronger. Like whatever those things were had left their stink inside my truck. I drove fast for miles, my nerves jangling, my eyes glued to the black ahead. And just when I thought maybe I'd shaken it off, I glanced in the mirror. Friend, I swear to you, in that little glass square I saw them, the robed figures, standing in the middle of the road behind me, all in a perfect line, torches burning bright, blank faces tilted up toward the night sky, and then the torches went out, all at once, like a hand had pinched the flames closed. The road fell black behind me, and I drove on into the night with my hands trembling and my teeth grinding so hard I thought they'd break. I didn't stop until I reached Amarillo. When I parked under the truck stop lights, I stepped out and nearly collapsed. My knees buckled. My hands still shaking. I walked the length of the rig with my flashlight, and that's when I found it. On the trailer doors smeared across the metal were symbols, dark black marks, circles crossed with lines, shapes that made no sense to me. They stank of that same rotten odor, like someone had pressed burning hands against the steel and left their mark. I scrubbed those doors clean with every rag I had, and still the smell lingered. For weeks it clung to me. My clothes, my skin. Even now, sometimes when I drive through the desert, I catch a whiff of that same rot. And every time it makes my stomach twist, because I know what it means. It means they're still out there, waiting by the roadside with their blank faces and their torches. And if you ever see them, friend, don't look too long, and don't you dare stop. Let's keep this rig rolling, because the night never runs out of bad memories, and I've got another one that still makes me sweat when I talk about it. This one happened out in West Virginia, on a stretch of road that winds through the mountains so tight and narrow, it feels like you're threading a needle with 80,000 pounds of steel. It was autumn, I remember that clear as day, because the leaves were burning gold and red in the daylight. But at night, that beauty twisted into something darker. The trees leaned so close they shut out the sky, and when the moonlight hit just right, the branches above looked like twisted claws scratching against each other. I was hauling lumber on that run, which meant my load was heavy and stacked high, and every curve made the trailer groan and sway. I had just fueled up in Charleston and was making my way toward the Virginia border when the air started to feel wrong. That's the only way I can put it. It wasn't the cool, crisp mountain air anymore. It was heavy damp, almost like breathing through wet cloth. My windows fogged, even though the heater was steady, and that smell came creeping in. Not pine, not earth, not rain, but something sour, like milk left to spoil. I cracked the window just to see if maybe I was imagining it, but that only made it worse. I remember tightening my grip on the wheel because something inside me whispered, "Don't stop. Don't slow down. Just keep moving." And then I saw her, standing on the shoulder. A woman in a white dress so thin I could see her legs through it. She was barefoot, and her hair hung long and black down to her waist. She didn't move, didn't wave, didn't step out. She just stood there facing the road like she'd been waiting all along. My lights caught her face, and that's when my stomach turned to ice. Because there was no face. Just smooth, pale skin stretched tight where features should be. No eyes, no nose, no mouth. Just a blank oval tilted toward me like it was staring without eyes. I pressed the pedal hard, but even as the truck thundered past, I felt something cold sweep through the cab, like icy fingers brushing across the back of my neck. My mirror showed nothing, just the endless black highway behind. But the air inside the cab stayed freezing, so cold I could see my breath fogging the windshield. I cranked the heat up full blast, but it did nothing. My teeth rattled. My hands shook on the wheel. And then the whisper started. Faint at first, like the hum of tires on the road, but it grew clearer. A woman's voice, soft and sharp all at once. It said, "Let me ride," over and over. "Let me ride. Let me ride." I shouted out loud, "I don't have room." My voice cracked and bounced off the windshield, but the whisper didn't stop. It just grew closer, crawling into my ears like ice water. I flicked the cab light on, and that's when my blood ran cold, because the passenger seat wasn't empty anymore. She was there, the faceless woman in white, sitting inches away, her head tilted toward me, blank skin glowing in the weak light. Her fingers long and thin gripping the seat so hard I heard the fabric strain. I nearly lost the rig on a curve, swerving hard enough that my trailer tires squealed against the pavement. When I looked again, she was gone. Seat empty, light buzzing overhead, but the whisper kept going. Louder, angry now. "Let me ride. Let me ride." My ears rang. My skull felt like it would split open. I don't know how I made it through those mountains without wrecking. Every mile was a battle, the whisper drilling into my brain, the cold biting at my bones. By the time I hit the state line, the voice stopped. Just like that, silence, the air warmed, my breath no longer fogged. But when I finally pulled into a rest stop, I looked at the passenger seat and saw deep marks carved into the fabric. Long, thin grooves like claws had dug straight through. I sat there shaking, unable to breathe for a long time. I never took that route again at night. Folks around there talk about a ghost woman on the roadside. They say if you let her ride, she takes you off the mountain and you're never seen again. And if you don't let her ride, she'll haunt you until you break. Maybe I didn't let her in fully, but I still feel her sometimes. Riding with me, sitting quiet in the corner of my cab, waiting for another chance. And I tell you, friend, if you ever run those mountain roads at night, and you see her standing there, don't look too long, don't roll down your window, and above all, don't ever let her ride. It happened out in Nevada, on one of those endless stretches of desert highway. I was hauling a flatbed load of lumber eastbound, headed for Utah. The night was dead quiet. The air was so dry it made my throat burn. Every few miles, a tumbleweed would roll across the road and disappear into the dark horizon. I remember thinking how empty it felt out there, like the world had just shut down and left me alone in it. Somewhere past midnight, I saw what looked like a bonfire off to the right side of the highway, flames rising high, orange light dancing across the sand. At first, I thought maybe some folks had set up camp out there, but as I got closer, I realized it wasn't that at all. There were people standing in a wide circle around the fire, maybe 20 of them, all wearing long dark robes, their faces hidden in the hoods. The firelight made their shadows stretch across the sand, long and twisted. Now I'm a trucker, not a fool, so I kept my eyes on the road and told myself, just keep driving, don't get involved. But the strangest thing happened. As I passed by, the flames flickered, and every single one of those figures turned their heads at the exact same time, their faces caught in the light. And I swear they were pale white, like masks with no eyes, just hollow black sockets staring straight at me. I felt a jolt go through me, like my whole body knew I was in danger. My hand gripped the wheel tighter. I pressed the pedal down, but before I could even get past them, the fire flared so bright it lit up the cab of my truck. And in that instant, I wasn't on the road anymore. I was standing in the middle of that circle, the fire in front of me, the figures surrounding me, silent, still, watching. I couldn't move. My legs felt locked, my throat dry like sandpaper. Then one of them stepped forward. His hood slipped back, and I saw his face. It wasn't a face at all. It was a skull with skin stretched thin like old leather. The socket's empty, but somehow I felt his eyes boring into me. I tried to scream. Nothing came out. The circle began to close in tighter. The fire burned higher, and the sound that rose from those figures wasn't chanting. It was whispering. Hundreds of voices whispering my name, over and over. Then the headlights of my truck flashed bright, and I was back behind the wheel, my hands shaking, my foot pressed to the floor. I flew down that highway like hell was on my tail. When I stopped at a rest area hours later, the air still smelled like smoke, and my clothes were damp like I had been standing by that fire. To this day, I can't explain what happened out there, but I swear those people, or whatever they were, tried to take me with them. The next one I'm about to tell you still wakes me up at night sometimes, and I don't mean in a simple bad dream way. I mean in the kind of way where you wake up soaked in sweat and the first thing you do is look toward the window or the corner of your room, just to make sure you're not back on that same highway again. This wasn't the desert this time. It was deep woods country, out in Arkansas, where the highway cuts through miles and miles of thick forest. And let me tell you, those trees can hide things you don't ever want to meet. They press in on both sides like dark walls. And once the sun goes down, you get the feeling that the whole forest is leaning over you, breathing on you, listening to you. And sometimes you swear it's waiting for you too. I had a late delivery that week coming out of Little Rock heading eastbound toward Memphis. I was loaded down with pallets of canned food, heavy enough to keep my rig grounded even when the road tilted and dipped. The night was humid, the kind of sticky air that makes your shirt cling to you even with the AC cranked up. And it was one of those nights where every mile felt heavier than the last. I remember the bugs hitting the windshield so thick I had to keep spraying and wiping every few minutes. And even then the glass was never fully clear, because they just kept coming. Like the forest was spitting them out at me. The smell of pine sap mixed with hot asphalt drifted through the vents, and it gave me a headache after a while. The forest pressed in close on both sides, tall pines and old oaks bending overhead like a dark tunnel. My lights only cut so far before the black swallowed them whole. I'd been driving about an hour when I saw him. A figure on the shoulder, just a man walking slow, dragging one leg behind him like it didn't work. His clothes looked torn up and filthy, dark with stains that could have been mud, or could have been something else. I slowed a little, thinking maybe he'd been in an accident. Maybe his car was back down the road. Maybe he'd been walking all this time. But the closer I got the stranger it looked. His arms hung too long, almost down to his knees. His head tilted to one side like his neck couldn't hold it up. His body language wasn't just off. It was wrong. It made my chest tighten. Like when you know a dog's about to snap at you and you can't do anything but wait. I eased over to the left lane to give him space. And that's when it happened. The man snapped his head toward me, fast, like a puppet jerked by a string. His eyes caught my headlights, bright and unnatural, glowing like glass reflecting a fire, and in an instant he dropped to all fours. He bolted into the trees. The way he moved didn't look human. His legs bent wrong, backwards, like a deer's. His back arched so high his stomach nearly scraped the ground. Yet he cleared the ditch like it wasn't even there, disappearing into the wall of pine like the forest swallowed him whole. My stomach turned cold. I pressed down on the pedal and didn't stop for miles. I kept looking in the mirror, kept expecting to see him crawling out of the trees, keeping pace with me. I swear for a moment I thought I did see something. A pale shape darting between trunks, the outline of those long arms dragging in the dirt. By the time I hit the next rest stop, I was shaking so bad I nearly dropped my thermos climbing down. I parked under the lights. I sat there gripping the wheel, sweat rolling down my face. My throat so dry I couldn't swallow. I couldn't shake the image of him dropping like that, crawling off into the forest faster than any person should be able to move. I told myself maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe I'd been driving too long. But here's the part that made me sure it wasn't just exhaustion playing tricks. When I got out to check my trailer, I found mud streaked across the side. Long marks, like something with hands had slapped against it while I drove past. I stared at those streaks under the yellow lights of the lot. My knees weak, my mouth open with nothing coming out. Because they weren't just random smears. They were handprints, long thin handprints, with finger marks too sharp, too stretched out. Not human. I never slept that night. Just sat in the cab with the doors locked, listening to the trees rustle, every sound making me think he was still out there, waiting for me to hit the road again. To this day, when I drive through Arkansas, I keep both hands on the wheel and my eyes wide open, and I pray I never see him again, because I don't think I'd be lucky twice.